All right, well, we are going to be, we're going to round these numbers here and percentage, and then we're going to make an estimate. And we're going to do it using what I call stacking. Start off with this first one here. What's 15% of 91? Well, I usually say if we're estimating to the closest 10%, that's close enough. But let's just think about this. We'll do it a couple of different ways. First of all, here's my disclaimer. I hate teaching estimating because people come up with many different estimates in many different ways, and it's hard to say these are the rules. But in this case here, we could say, we could estimate this as 10%. We could say 10% of 90. Well, 10% of 90 is going to be equal to, just moving that decimal one, it's just going to be equal to 9. So 9 is a good estimate. We could say 20% of 90 and estimate it that way. Well, if 10% equals 9, we do 10% twice, we could add those up. Here's my 20%. That's going to equal 18. And that's a fine estimate. All right? So we got two of them here. Here's my first estimate. Here's my second estimate. Let's do yet a third one. Same problem. What if we said we want to know what 15% of 90 is? Well, again, 10%, we move that. 10% equals 9. 5% is going to equal half of that, which would be $4.50. So 15%, an estimate would be $13 and, sorry, I got the 19, $13.50. Pretty simple, right? I wish it was. It gets complicated. So, all these are good answers. I think this is a better, I wouldn't put this problem here on the test. I think these others are better problems. So let's take a look at one of these and let's work right from here. Let's do 75% of 85. So 70% of 86. So let's just call this 70% of 90. That's what we're trying to find. Well, if you know that what 10% of a number is and what half of it, 50% of a number is, I always say you can estimate good enough for the rest of your life. So 50%, let's do 50% first. 50% of 90 would be, well, half of 90 would be 45. So that's what 50% says. Now 10%, we already know that we can just move that decimal once. 10% of 90 is going to be 9. Well, let's do another 10%. It's 9. Now look at 50, 60, 70. We've got our 70% there. And this is actually 45 plus 9 plus 9. So this is equal to 63. There's our estimate, 63. Now, I know I'm writing this down, but we're trying to teach you to stack, as I call it this way, stack percentages, stack landmark percentages so that you can do it mentally. On the test, you will be required to do it, show the work just as I've showed you here. So let's grab another one here. Let's go with, how about 35 down, go way down here at the bottom. Let's go with 35% of 36. So we round these off. You want to call it 30% or 40%? You know what? I think I'm going to call it 40%. And I'm going to round this guy up to, round this up to 40. Just looking for an estimate here, folks. 40% of 40. Well, I know that 10% equals 4, right? Move the decimal. So if I think about that, 10, 20, 30, 40, 40% will equal 16. There's my estimate. All right, try another one. I'm going to run out of these guys here. %of 71. Well, we could do 80% of 70. That would be a good estimate. Could do 92, but I thought I'd do 80. So let's see. 50%. What's 50% of 70? Well, half of 70, half of 60 is 30. Half of the 10 remainder is 5. So this is 35. So 50% is 35. So I've got my 50. Here's my 10%. Just move it once, it'll be 7. Here's another 10%. Same thing. So here's my 50, 60, 70. Let me throw one more in there. It's not. There's my 80. 50, 60, 70, 80%. It's 35 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7. So I think about this as 21. And this is going to be 56. So 80% equals about 56. Let me do one more for you. 5% of 52? Well, what do you want to call it? Well, we could do it this way. Let's do 10% of 50. Well, 10% of 50 is just going to move the decimal one. So 10% is going to equal 5. If you know that 10% equals 5, couldn't you say that, well, then 5% equals 2.5? Half of it? Again, think about money. Half of $5, $2.50. All right, so we're going to do one more quick one like that. Here's one here. What's 20% of 69? 20% of 69? Well, think about it. Let's go with, let's make this 20% of 70. Well, 10% will equal 7, right? Just move the decimal. So here's 2 tens. Here's my 20% will equal 14. All right. I'm open to other ways of doing this as long as somehow you can show how you got your work. I think one of the most interesting other ways is the way I did this problem down here. 10% of 40, sorry, 40% of 40. So we knew that 10% equals 4. So sometimes kids will just do this. 10% equals 4. 4 times 4 equals 16. I would understand that work. They know that 10% equals 4. They're going to need 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. We'll need 4 of those. So there's your 16. Okay, good luck. Tough target.